The Pentagon says U.S. missiles almost completely destroyed the Iraqi intelligence headquarters in Baghdad. Angry Iraqis denounced the United States for the attack, while President Clinton's decision to use armed force wins support from the Congress and the allies. This is the CBS Evening News. Hello, everybody. Russ Mitchell reporting. Good evening. More tough talk from the White House one day after the latest U.S. attack on Baghdad. President Clinton called the attack a success, but expressed sorrow that some of the missiles went off course, killing at least 8 civilians. The target, the Iraqi intelligence headquarters complex in the heart of Baghdad, was largely destroyed. We begin our coverage this evening with national security correspondent David Martin at the Pentagon.
If you had been in Baghdad at 2 o'clock this morning, this is what you would have seen and heard. Cruise missiles launched from the Red Sea and Persian Gulf slammed into the headquarters of the Iraqi intelligence service. If you were unlucky enough to live in a neighborhood next to the headquarters, this is what you would have found when the sun came up. Some of the cruise missiles had gone astray.
There were at least 3 missiles that did not go into the headquarters area and did cause some collateral damage. We regret that, but that is one of the risks of using military force.
20 missiles landed inside the intelligence compound, although not all hit the headquarters building they were aimed at. Still, the damage was heavy enough for military officers to call the attack a success.
The director's offices and his facilities, the leadership wing, if you will, here, which was very, very heavily damaged. The top 2 floors utterly destroyed. Another hit back here, and then in the adjacent support buildings here and here. Much of their communication capability, records, computer support, as well as their operations center, all suffered major damage by this strike.
The Iraqis were caught completely by surprise and could do little more than brace for further attacks.
We certainly have had dispersal of air defense units, dispersal of ground forces in areas pretty well throughout Iraq. Indeed, their reaction to this strike can only be described as somewhat time late.
The Pentagon ordered the carrier Roosevelt to move from the Mediterranean down to the Red Sea as a precaution against any attempts by Saddam Hussein to strike back. But U.S. officials said they had no plans for further attacks.
The retaliation for the attempt on George Bush's life is over, but the bitter standoff with Saddam Hussein continues and is likely to drag on for as long as he remains in power. Russ?
David, a lot of Americans are saying enough of this. Why didn't we target Saddam Hussein this time?
Well, one of the secrets to military success is only to undertake those missions which you are sure you can accomplish. The U.S. was sure it could inflict heavy damage on that intelligence headquarters, but finding Saddam Hussein is a very iffy proposition. They tried to get him throughout the Persian Gulf War without any luck, and that was an all-out bombing campaign. So the odds are very long against launching a single attack and catching him, and to set out to do that would simply be setting yourself up for failure.
Okay, David Martin at the Pentagon. Thank you very much. There is satisfaction at the White House tonight. A president who has seen his share of battle scars of late is getting a thumbs up on Capitol Hill. White House correspondent Susan Spencer has that story.
It was an untested president's first clash with America's sworn enemy, and a confident Mr. Clinton this morning declared it a success.
I feel quite good about what transpired, and I think the American people should feel good about it.
What about the casualties?
I regret that very much. But I would remind you that the reason the mission was carried out at the time it was and in the way it was to try to minimize the loss of life.
President Clinton, sometimes accused of waffling on big decisions, obviously was determined to show strength and decisiveness to the nation last night.
From the first days of our revolution, America's security has depended on the clarity of this message. Don't tread on us.
A plot against an ex-president is a plot against the country, he said. Today, Mr. Bush, who was told of the attack 2 hours before it occurred, agreed and expressed support through his former national security chief.
Clearly one of the few things that Saddam Hussein understands is force.
United Nations Ambassador Albright this afternoon detailed the hard evidence the administration says links the plot to Iraq, specific parts of the car bomb traceable to Baghdad. Vice President Gore warned Saddam against retaliating.
Counterterrorism units are advised of the changing circumstances, and without going into much detail, let me just say that precautions have been taken.
Even if there is retaliation, the consensus in Washington is that Mr. Clinton had no choice but to act, given the evidence.
I think his response in this situation was the appropriate response. But there'll be more tests, and there are some existing out there now, and I think there'll probably even be some responses from Iraq.
It's really become a capital city with an attitude, hasn't it, about the president? No matter what he does, this may be okay, but we hope he goofs up later. I think we had to do this. If we hadn't done this, he would have looked like a jellyfish.
Especially considering his own lack of military service and controversies over gays in the military and base closings. So will this help his image?
I don't think that had anything to do with the reason he took this action. I think it was entirely justified based on the facts, but certainly I would expect there to be broad-scale support both in the American public and in the military.
The White House clearly expects the same, and aides say that if any of this surprises Mr. Clinton's critics, perhaps that's because they've never seen him in a situation like this before. Still, political gain based on military action can be very fleeting, as the last president learned. Russ?
Susan Spencer at the White House. Thank you. In Iraq, reaction was swift and familiar. CBS News chief European correspondent Tom Fenton in our listening post in Amman has the latest on events in Baghdad.
Before the sun had set in Baghdad, Iraqis buried some of those who had died in today's early morning raid. Thousands of angry demonstrators lined the streets as mourners carried 6 coffins toward the cemetery. Some chanted, "Clinton, pay attention. We are the people who toppled Bush." Others called for vengeance against what the Iraqi government called Washington's cowardly aggression. That was the message from Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. His Revolutionary Command Council met this afternoon to assess the damage of the American missile strike. The council described the raid as a barbaric attack against innocent civilians. This was the image Baghdad wanted the world to see today. Shattered homes, rescue workers digging through the wreckage, pulling the dead from the ground. The injured were taken for medical care. Residents vented their anger at Washington.
We have nothing! Why? American criminals!
Pieces of metal with American military markings, presumably from Tomahawk missiles, were prominently displayed. And Iraqi television showed pictures of wounded civilians in hospitals. While the Iraqis focused on the civilian casualties, they did not talk much about the target of the raid, the intelligence service headquarters. But they did say that the plot to assassinate former President Bush, allegedly hatched in that headquarters, was fabricated by the Kuwaitis and the Americans. Russ?
Tom, what's the early word on that front? Will this attack discourage Saddam Hussein?
Well, judging from his track record, he'll try to test the United States again sometime in the future. And as a matter of fact, it can be a useful thing for a dictator like Saddam Hussein to distract the attention of his people at a time when they're suffering severe economic problems at home.
Okay, Tom Fenton in Amman, thank you very much. Still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, more reaction to the U.S. strike against Iraq, and the baseball world pays tribute to Roy Campanella.
Job of handling Campanella leading off for Brooklyn.
Muslim countries today denounced the U.S. attack on Baghdad, some asking why similar action is not taken against Serbs in Bosnia. Otherwise, support for the U.S. was almost universal, as Martha Teichner reports.
Stop Western murdering! Hands off Iraq!
Outside the American embassy in London today, there was a display of indignation over the strike. But the official response of Washington's Western allies and Russia was unqualified support.
There was a deliberate and premeditated attempt to assassinate a former president of the United States. I don't think that can possibly be tolerable in terms of international behavior.
But on British television tonight, the Iraqi ambassador to Belgium disputed any suggestion of an assassination attempt.
We can confirm there is no plot. What interest the Iraqi have to kill Bush?
But in general, reaction to the attack was predictable. U.S. allies in the Gulf War in favor, its enemies opposed. Iran called the United States a bully. The Israelis, who withstood a rain of Iraqi Scud missiles during the Gulf War, said they were notified in advance and approved. As PLO Chairman Yasser Arafat arrived in Egypt for a meeting, the Palestinians called it deplorable. But it was the Egyptian foreign minister who today demonstrated that cracks are forming in the Arab alliance that supported the United States against Saddam Hussein. He talked about a double standard and said he wished American policies were as strict over Serb aggression in Bosnia. Martha Teichner, CBS News, London.
The U.S. took more casualties in Somalia today. A UN spokesman says 2 American peacekeepers clearing a roadblock were shot and wounded by snipers. One is in serious condition. A Pakistani soldier was also wounded. Investigators said today the tapes of Muslim cleric Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman made by an informer are not enough evidence to arrest him. Followers of the Sheikh are among those charged in the new bombing and assassination plot uncovered last week in New York. In its final day of votes, the Commission on Closing Military Bases gave a consolation prize of sorts to Charleston, South Carolina. It decided to greatly expand the city's Naval Engineering Center, adding thousands of high-tech jobs. The hope is this might relieve some of the pain of losing the Navy base and shipyard. Progress was reported as talks on bringing back democracy to Haiti opened today in New York. Ousted President Jean-Bertrand Aristide met on Governor's Island with a UN mediator, as did Raoul Cedras, the general who deposed him 2 years ago. At UN headquarters, thousands of Haitians demonstrated in support of Aristide. The UN imposed an oil embargo against Haiti last week. CBS News consultant George Christ is a retired Marine Corps general and former commander of U.S. military forces in the Persian Gulf. He joins us this evening to analyze yesterday's attack on Baghdad. General Christ, good seeing you again. Thanks for being here. Yeah. We keep hearing from the White House that this was a wake-up call to Saddam Hussein. He's had similar calls before and hasn't responded. In your mind, from a military standpoint, was this enough?
Well, I don't know if it was enough for us, but it sure was a wake-up call. It was a carbon copy of the attack that we had back in January with some big exceptions. In the first place, the attack went to downtown Baghdad, not 8 to 10 miles away. And secondly, it went right after one of the instruments of his power, the thing that keeps Saddam there, not a machine shop.
I see.
And the third point is, it was a bolt out of the blue, surprise attack. And if you were working for Saddam Hussein closely, you might be a little nervous a tomahawk was coming through your roof.
I see. Now, we heard the reason for this from the White House was the Iraqi plot to assassinate President Bush. But I have to ask you, is there more to it than that?
Yes, I think so. The Bush assassination plot was the proximate cause, certainly. But there have been events leading up to this. There have been incidents in the no-fly zone. One as late as last Sunday. One of our aircraft, Navy aircraft, shot at by a missile. These have been unanswered and generally downplayed in the press. The UN is having a standoff right now, a destruction of chemical weapons as well as inspection of a missile range. What Saddam found out, that this president, President Clinton, is not afraid to use military power if he thinks he has to do it.
And the thought that Saddam Hussein had in the past was, hey, nothing has happened to this point with this new guy, the new guy being President Clinton, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing.
Exactly.
From a military standpoint, does Saddam Hussein have anything left? Can he retaliate?
There's absolutely nothing he can do militarily, not a thing. He knows it, and his people know it.
In the future now, we talk about the next step in this story, this never-ending story. The ball is in whose court right now?
It's back to Saddam. President Clinton has served notice that, look, you can't be an international outlaw. You're going to have to go with the sanctions. And if you don't, you're going to get hurt again. So it's over to him now to see what is going to be his next move.
Very quickly, General, at what point do you say enough of these little hits? Let's go in and get Saddam Hussein. How long can you keep doing this?
Oh, Russ, Saddam's a survivor. Went through a disastrous war, 2 revolts, a crumbling economy. He's still there. I think we can keep hitting him as long as he wants to be an international outlaw.
Okay. General George Christ, former commander of U.S. forces in the Persian Gulf. Again, good seeing you again. Thanks for coming in. And there's more news when we come back. Stay with us. Unusual June flooding, the worst in decades along the northern Mississippi, has virtually stopped shipping and recreation on the river. David Culhane has more.
Rising floodwaters are threatening to close a 500-mile stretch of the Mississippi River, from St. Paul in Minnesota to St. Louis in Missouri. Officials are shutting down the locks that control shipping. Commercial and recreational boats have been forced off the river by fast-moving water and debris that can damage hulls.
You know, everybody's sitting on the grain. We have to be sitting on the grain right now, and the boats that we locked through the last day or so, they're tying up down here in Dubuque, and they're decrewing, so there'll be people getting laid off.
Homes, businesses, even some airports are threatened. But there are entrepreneurs selling to sightseers along the banks.
Bratwursts for $2, Polish sausages for $2, hot dogs for $1.25.
The Army Corps of Engineers at Rock Island, Illinois is predicting that this will be the second highest flood level on record for the Mississippi. some areas, officials say the river is approaching its highest level in nearly 3 decades.
Makes you realize how powerful a river can be.
Most people are ready for the flood, but still it's hurting the economy.
Well, it slows everything down. Cost everybody a lot of money.
Officials say it could be as long as a month before the river returns to normal. David Culhane, CBS News, New York.
This is Gay Pride Weekend, and across the nation, gay men and lesbians and their supporters marched for equal rights. In San Francisco, an estimated 500,000 people rallied on Market Street. And in Denver, marchers in uniform and out protested the ban against gays in the military and Colorado's anti-gay Amendment 2. One of baseball's brightest and most tragic stars is dead. Dodger great Roy Campanella, whose career was cut short by a car accident, died in California last night. Jacqueline Adams takes a look back at Campanella's Hall of Fame career.
At Dodger Stadium this afternoon, fans and teammates said a sad goodbye to Roy Campanella, the power-hitting catcher whom owner Peter O'Malley called the greatest Dodger of them all. Campanella died last night of a heart attack. He was 71.
He could think behind the plate. He could get the best out of a pitcher.
Everybody loved Roy Campanella. I have never, ever heard anybody in all the years I've been in baseball, all the years I played with the Brooklyn Dodgers, and all the time I was around, I never heard anybody say a bad word about Roy Campanella.
If Campanella had been just a baseball player, he would have been impressive.
And with 2 out, Campanella blasts a home run.
A star of the 1955 World Series, Campanella was the National League's most valuable player in 55 as well as 51 and 53. A Hall of Famer. And in 1948, he followed Jackie Robinson as the second African American to break Major League Baseball's color barrier. Together, they faced the kind of pressure few have known.
We didn't consider it as pressure. We were young and we liked to play. Thank God we were able to win.
Yes, Campy was a terrific baseball player, but oh, he was so much more. After 10 years in the majors, a car crash left him a quadriplegic. That's when he really became a role model.
Living in a wheelchair, it's left within the individual. You want to live, it's easy to live, all you have to do is accept a chair. And that's life.
For the rest of his life, Campy continued to play a role in baseball, coaching young catchers, attending every Dodger home game, but most importantly, inspiring millions.
I don't feel a word of bitterness about my accident or nothing. If I did, I don't think I'd have lived 30-some years in this wheelchair.
Roy Campanella will no longer have to worry about a wheelchair. He'll no longer have to worry about walking, because right now, this man is walking with the Lord.
I thought this was the greatest opportunity I had ever gotten in life. And I never will forget it. And thank God I made the best of it.
There was no joy in Mudville today as mighty Mets pitcher Anthony Young captured an all-time Major League Baseball record, one that nobody wants: 24 consecutive losses. The hapless Mets lost to the St. Louis Cardinals 5-3. The loss moves Young ahead of Cliff Curtis, who had 23 straight losses some 80 years ago. Americans have an obsession for speed, which explains horse racing, auto racing, even pig racing at county fairs. Well, Bill Geist is down in Florida, where he has found a boat race that stresses design over speed.
We're here at the International Submarine Races in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where the action this weekend is fast and furious. Seriously. Now, if this is what most of us think of when we think of submarines, it's time for us to think again. These are the new two-man racing subs. One crew member pedals, the other steers.
I've been called thoroughly, completely out of my mind.
Oh yeah, you know, submarine races, that's what you took your girlfriend to watch it when you were a teenager.
43 teams from throughout the nation and the world showed up this weekend to compete in the big race.
We race against submersible, and they win, we don't.
Some entries are from professional engineering firms spending thousands of dollars. But some are dentists, like Gary Massaretis from New York. There are people here that are putting thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into theirs. How much money do you have in yours?
About $400.
Gary lost. There are some rather obvious differences. On the old subs, leaking was understandably a constant concern. No more. The new subs are flooded with water at the outset, and the crew breathes with scuba equipment. As goofy as it looks sometimes, there is a serious purpose in all this.
It's easy to put these together, but it's tough to make them work in the ocean. Let's say that.
The competitors love submarine racing. This third biannual race had more entries than ever. But submarine racing faces problems in terms of sponsor and fan interest. Visibility problems. Submarine racing, still America's slowest growing spectator sport.
And that's the news. Coming up on 60 Minutes, Leslie Stahl reports on Ron Arad, the Israeli Air Force navigator who's been held hostage in Lebanon for the past 6 years. Later, join Jacqueline Adams, who will be sitting in for Bill Plant on the CBS Sunday Night News. I'm Russ Mitchell in New York. Good night.
CBS News.
Hey, wait a minute. If Uncle Sam is supposed to protect you from illegal gun dealers, why is he acting like their new best friend? Eye on America on the CBS Evening News tomorrow.
This is CBS.